who do you think is the player that stopped the Cowboys from spending in free agency?
Stopped. I want to say like Greg Hardy. But I can't remember. Wasn't that kind of cheap, relatively cheap too?
Yes. Couple years before.
A couple years before that, was it a defensive player
yes.
too? Was it Leroy Glover? Henry Melton?
Brandon Carr.
Really?
So, I mean, I'll let you decide the cause and effect. I think this is a very compelling argument. All right. So, 2012, the Cowboys overpaid to add Brandon Carr because they knew they were struggling defensively, and he was supposed to be one of the, if not the best option on the market. And he's another player he was fine. Like, I'm not here to say he was a trash player while he was here, but he was fine, but not worth what you paid at the time. All right, now look at what happens after that. The Cowboys sign 2 free agents in 2013 and get 2 total starts. Then in 2014, the Cowboys sign 2 free agents and get 19 starts, including Jeremy Mincey, who is the only free agent the Cowboys have signed in the last 8 years that has started all the games the next year. Think about that for a second. Since the Brandon Carr signing, that's it. It's Jeremy Mincey is the guy who came in here and started all of the games. Then you look at 2015. You're up to 23 starts because they started Greg Hardy every single game. 2016, 9 starts with Benson Mayowa and Joe Looney. Then you look at 2017, 8 starts with Stephen Paella, Nolan Carroll, and Byron Bell. And that 2 of those were obviously out of necessity. The next year, Deontay Thompson and Cam Fleming, 7 starts. The next year, Randall Cobb and Christian Covington, 12 starts. And I take it back. There was one other free agent who came in and started all the games. You know who it was? Greg Zuerlein. Out of last year's free agency class, outside of your kicker, the only person that started any games was Blake Bell, and he started 2 games. And so I was really intrigued by the cause and effect there, because since then, the Cowboys have signed 29 players over the last 8 free agency periods. 8 of them never made it to a regular season game. 4 were cut, another retired, and out of those classes, 6 of those classes failed to yield 35 games played. Not started, played.
But, okay, so hold on. You're saying that Brandon Carr is the reason?
Brandon Carr appeared to start the trend of the Cowboys being scared of free agency.
Brandon Carr started 16 games every year that he played here.
He did.
His first 2 years, he had 3 interceptions a year. So he had 6 interceptions in his first 2 seasons. Now he had 0-0-1 after that.
Yep.
And you can say whatever you want about defense or whatever. And I understand, like, he had 25 passes defensed in like his 3rd year, and that dude was kind of on his way up. But I also, I guess one of the problems I have is whenever I think Jerry Jones will hang the Dion tag on somebody, or hang the Michael Irvin tag on somebody, and then hang the Troy Aikman. You know what I'm saying here?
Yeah.
And that now he has convinced himself that he just bought this guy because I paid all this money. I clearly got this dude. And then the expectation is that they're going to be that level of player when they aren't. Like, Dion was one of the best cornerbacks if not the best cornerback to ever play the game.
Yes.
Mike Fisher will say Michael Irvin was the best wide receiver. I understand the discrepancy there,
wow.
But he says, I watched him practice all the time. He was the number 2 wide receiver of all time. So, like, that's what happens is they had this amazing talent when Jerry Jones first bought this team, and he's been chasing that dragon every year since then and probably giving the label to somebody before they deserve it. And, I mean, that goes back to Antonio Bryant. He got 88, and they were like, this is the next 88, right?
Yeah.
And whenever the reality wasn't there, that's what that football player was. So I see what you're saying. I don't think Brandon Carr was the fall, though. I don't think he was the fault, but that's the timeline I see that you're saying is when it started.
I think that the Cowboys decided in that moment. This is just a theory that I happen to agree with from the Dallas Morning News, that they got solid performance but paid top dollar. And that's not a logical spending point. And I'm looking at these classes. Tell me if there are any of these players, and if so, who they are, who like made a real difference. You can define that however you want. In 2013, it was Justin Durant and Will Allen.
Justin Durant was a good player. Will Allen did nothing.
Jeremy Mincy and Henry Melton. Because we thought Henry Melton was going to be...
I was very disappointed with Henry Melton. Jeremy Mincy, like we had a celebration when they... Was it a trade? It was a free agency?
Yeah.
We had a celebration that year, Kevin. I was disappointed in that. I thought Jeremy Mincy played above who he was.
Darren McFadden, Greg Hardy, Andrew Gatchkar, remember him? And Jasper Brinkley. Bet you don't remember that person.
Who were the first two you said?
Darren McFadden and Greg Hardy.
McFadden, we didn't have any high expectations for.
He had 1,000 yards, yeah.
And Greg, like I really had no expectations for McFadden. Greg Hardy, it was a huge risk.
Yeah.
Like we all understood the risk that came along with that.
And would you argue that the PR hit made it way worse than what he contributed on the field?
And the fact that Romo got hurt.
Yeah.
Like that injury, like that caused a big problem for that team that year.
And then you look at the more names in the list. I'm going to fast track some of these. Cedric Thornton, Alfred Morris, Benson Mayowa, Joe Looney, Stephen Paella, DeMontre Moore, Nolan Carroll, Robert Blanton, Byron Bell, Coney Ely, Cam Fleming, Marcus Martin, Deontay Thompson, George Ioka, Christian Covington, Randall Cobb, Greg Zuerlein, Blake Bell, Gerald McCoy.
Okay, all right. Okay, I get it, Kevin. I get it. There are a lot of people, all right? There are a lot of people in the world. I don't know them all, but there are a lot of them. Why have you never signed Ndamukong Suh? Didn't he have a 1-year, $10 million contract he was asking for? That's it.
You know what he is? This just hit me. He is to the Cowboys what supposedly the Mavericks seem to think about Andre Drummond, right? Like every year you look at it and you're like, I mean, he was solid last year. This makes sense, but the Cowboys do not want him.
Yeah, so
it appears.
This is a player that everywhere he goes, they end up in the Super Bowl, except for Detroit. But he was the best player like available on those teams. And I guess Miami. But he's still a good player. So I understand what you're talking about. And you keep throwing a bunch of names out there that are guys that are probably past their primes or probably second-tier guys that they're signing as free agents. But then the rest of the young players that are supposed to be the stars aren't ready to carry the team. And so like the Justin Durant signing was good. He was a good player.
Yeah.
But I didn't expect him to come here and win a championship as the player. So like that's my frustration is – like, man, don't I want the highest caliber players? And do I not know the league enough to know which guys are the highest caliber players and which guys aren't? So I just get I get in that mode, Kevin, of Ndamukong Suh's been there, and for some reason, and you've had a terrible time trying to fill that spot.
Yeah.
And you refuse to sign the dude that could be a solution there. So for all of your problems, why don't you come up with better solutions?